Welcome to another episode of Talk to the Fedora, chatting about hard-hitting, honest entrepreneur wisdom that you can use to grow your small business. My name is Jared Goldsmith from eSAX Virtual Events, and today we're very pleased to be welcoming David Dunlop. David Dunlop has been organizing meetings, conferences, and special events across Canada and abroad for over 40 years. In 1977, he accepted the post of Deputy Chief of Protocol, heading the department's visits and conference services at the Department of Foreign Affairs and International Trade. For 10 years, he was responsible for international and official visits to Canada of heads of states and governments, foreign ministers, and other ministerial-level visitors, and for policy and logistics for official visits to Canada. In 1987, he left the public service to establish Dr. Dunlop Associates, Inc., event planning and management. Since then, David has coordinated policy and logistics for over 350 meetings and conferences in both the public and the private sectors, from 10 to several thousand participants in all provinces and territories and in 5 countries. When COVID brought in-person events to a stop, David took his extensive experience in protocol and event planning to create courses that help assist and educate clients. Thank you so much for joining us today, David.
Good morning, Jared. Happy to do this.
Pleasure to see you again. So, David, let's start off. Where are you calling in from, please?
I'm calling in from Ottawa. I live in the center of Ottawa in Little Italy, and we have a condo where my wife and I, business partner though, run a business.
Excellent. David, let's talk a bit about who is David Dunlop, and let's dive into a little bit more about what Dr. Associates is all about, please.
In 1987, after 10 years in the protocol office, after Expo 86 in Vancouver, where I ran the National Day visits, 38 National Day visits of people like Margaret Thatcher and the Crown Prince of Spain, etc., all came to honor their pavilions. Driving back in the snow with my wife and 2-year-old, we decided to leave the government. 10 years was enough of the protocol side. I'd had interesting other jobs in the government, but decided it was time to start my own business. And that's how we strategized Dr. Dunlop Associates and what we were actually going to do. Event planning and conferences came about a year later. We originally thought we'd do international public relations. I'd been working with the Diplomatic Corps for years, and then realized they don't pay. They're not interested necessarily in what you do once you've done it. So we got quickly into doing events and broadened, of course, to do international. We did domestic, and didn't drop anything. And we had a wonderful number of years until COVID, of course, ground everything to a halt.
Right. And David, why did you decide to focus more on the protocol side, like the high level ministerial types of conferences versus, let's say, weddings or other events?
Well, weddings, too emotional. Decided we've been asked to do them, and so some of my team went and handled them, and I'm very glad I never did any one of them. But no, the protocol side of it, the high-end side, after 10 years doing nothing but kings, queens, presidents, and prime ministers, and even before that, I got some really interesting jobs. Worked with the United Nations, doing an international conference on human settlements, and even back to the first big one I actually worked in, and that was Expo 67 in Montreal, the world's largest international exposition. I enjoyed doing those things, and so when I decided to get out of government, start my own business, that was the natural thing to get into. And the high end, because of detail.
Yeah.
I like doing detail.
David, did you have a background in entrepreneurship or business when you decided to launch?
Sure didn't. The first couple of months of checks coming in with taxes attached, I thought, oh gosh, this is all mine. Well, it wasn't when I started doing quarterlies and realizing that there was a lot to pay. No, I did not have a background. No, I did start out at Carleton University in economics and accounting and didn't like any one of the courses I was taking, so switched to political science, French literature, and no, business was not part of that. I learned quickly.
Yeah.
I'm still learning a lot. And all the whole taxes, all the things you have to do, I do a lot of my own accounting. I do have a run our own business and we do our own business side of it. And you've got to do that. You've got to know what you're bringing in and sending out. That's absolutely essential.
Yeah, I mean, launching a business and being in business for all these years is phenomenal. Congratulations, David. But a lot of the time it takes collaboration. I see you quite often. We've been very involved with the Ottawa Board of Trade, other organizations and community groups around the city. How important is the concept of collaboration to you?
Absolutely essential. You can, and there are a number of companies in town that I know they do conferences. Don't know what else they do. Never see them. I know the names. I'm out there constantly. Well, like you.
Yeah.
It adds to our depth. It adds to my knowledge. Every meeting, the things I'm going to this week, next week, they're important because I learn. I'm constantly learning. No event is the same. Many people say, "Oh, it must be so boring because you're doing the same bits over and over again." It's not. Every one that's different. So collaboration, and we do collaborate now. It was interesting. A number of years ago, when I used to go to bidding wars, bidding presentations, and the government was doing something, and they brought in the various businesses. All the Ottawa ones, we sat together and chatted and had a great time. Then the Toronto and Montreal ones sat in their little pods and nobody spoke. And I remember them coming to me and saying, so you're all talking to each other? Well, yeah, we hire each other. I've worked in all sorts of, one last week, a company that I'd done stuff before. They hired me and I did a particular aspect of it.
Yeah.
We enjoy doing that. And we support each other.
Absolutely. It's so important, like supporting the ecosystem. And you hit on something really important. My next question is about networking. You're no stranger to networking. You've read the book on that. But when you said earlier that there's some people who you know and they sit at the same table. So let's talk about some of your favorite networking tips, if you will.
Right from when I left the government, the first thing I joined was an organization called Ottawa AM, and it was in Sante Restaurant at the corner of Sussex and Rideau. And every 2 Friday mornings early, we would meet and we would have a speaker. Mm-hmm. I still see a lot of the people from that era, and I'm talking about 87, 88, 89. We still contact each other. It was just a great way of finding out who else was doing what, and we'd support each other. The networking side of it was immense. We had speakers from the opening of the new airport to Elizabeth May used to come as part of the Sierra group. All these people we still keep up with. The networking side of it was so important.
Yeah.
You can't go anywhere in this country without meeting somebody you've met before. You don't burn your bridges in this city specifically, or in this province, or in this country, because you're going to meet them again.
Yeah.
That's what I have a lot of fun doing when I travel at different hotels. Meet people you haven't seen in years. This past week, I was really surprised that so many people came just to see that I was still alive. They'd heard I was at the Shaw Center and doing an event. And I had people come up and we have 3,500 delegates, and somebody come up and grab your arm, and I recognize the face immediately.
Oh, nice.
That's gratifying. I make sure I do that when I'm traveling. If I'm anywhere in the country, and I know there's somebody I haven't seen in a long time, just give them a call, have a quick cup of coffee if we can.
Yeah. I mean, that relationship part really helps make everything smoother when you've worked with them, you've known them for years. But let's say there's a small business starting out, David. How do they break into the networking circuit?
Going to things like the Board of Trade's events, joining organizations like MPI, CSAE, CanSpec. All of these organizations are there to support you in your business. And they all have contacts, and they all network, and you're networking when you're part of that. So it's important to get out there and do that. Sitting here in comfortable surroundings, I could do that. But I like getting out. One of the big things I missed during the COVID period was coffee shops all around here. You can go and have coffee for an hour and talk to somebody. And head off. Tomorrow morning I'm doing that after the dentist. I'm going across the street to Bridgehead and meeting somebody else because we both happen to be downtown at the same time.
Right, right.
That is immense in helping in your business.
Yeah. Something else that's also immense, David, is the concept of branding. People who are, let's say, launching a business, the small business, they may or may not have an established brand yet. Many of us cannot rely on the goodwill, the relationships that we built over a lifetime that you're so lucky to have had. How does branding play into a business, please, David?
Branding is important. They look at the name, they look at the idea, and they have a good idea after some time, after a brief time actually, just what you are, the quality. With my business, it's built up. I do not just high-end events, I do lots of smaller ones too, but I try to do them all in the same way, in detail, getting very much involved in them, knowing what the subject matter is. When I do an event, my responsibility is the details and the logistics. The client looks after the substantive part of it.
Yeah.
But when you're branding, somebody's going to look at the name DR Dunlop and Associates and think, oh, that's a company that I've heard of and we've been involved in that does excellent work, responsible, reliable. We're out there. One problem, though, with the name, DR Dunlop and Associates, which is not was great, we could have called it maple trees or oak leaves or whatever, and we called it our own name. That's a problem because I can't sell it. No one's going to want to sell a DR Dunlop name. They might like some of my clients, but that's not necessarily going to help. So that hindered me. And I've only realized that in the past couple of years. So think about what you're going to call yourself.
That's really important because many people, they want to put their name associated with it, but they might not be thinking many years down the future when it comes time to sell. That's
exactly.
Yeah.
Or just in my case, I probably won't be able to sell it. I'll just slide out. I'd like it to be left as a name that people really look at as being quality.
Right. So that's a good point. Thank you. What about some money flow, cash tips for the small businesses out there, David?
It's a real problem.
Yeah.
As we all know, we're sort of in the gig economy. I mean, I don't belong to an organization. I don't belong to my company. And it's constantly a problem because you have peaks and valleys and highs and lows. And the highs are great, and you've got to be very careful and put enough money aside to hit the lows. Financial planning is absolutely essential. And one of the things we did not do properly when we first started this, and it's a problem now, is all of the insurance policies. Sure, we had basic insurance, but we didn't have things like health insurance. Things like the Board of Trade offers now. We didn't have that years ago, and that would have been immense assistance to us. So we don't have that. Think what you're charging. You don't want it to be so high nobody's going to accept it. On the other hand, you don't want to be so low because then you're undervaluing yourself.
Right.
And people do look, clients do look at it and say, well, they don't charge much. I wonder what the problem is. So that's something that you've got to be very careful of. Also, when you're doing a proposal and a contract, be awfully careful what you're offering. Too often in the early days, I'd say, well, I probably can add that to this. And my business partner, my wife, will do this. Of course, business partner, wife, takes a look at it and said, but you didn't even discuss this with me, and we're not even charging. I'm not doing this for free. So that you've got to look at. Scope creep, which is something that we're having more and more problems with these days, is when the client takes your contract and has you doing things and just adds little things on here and there, a little more here.
Yeah.
That does really hit your bottom line. So you've got to watch and be watched very carefully. We didn't. We added all sorts of things. Well, that's a problem. Of course, I'll do the printing of that for that. That's something. most clients, once they've asked and they look at it, understand it's not necessary that you do it without compensation.
That's really wise. Because I know when I launched over 10 years ago, somebody said, "Well, do you do this?" Yes, absolutely. You say people often would say yes to everything, and they're not realizing it's not our specialty. We've never done it before, but you bend over backwards to try to accommodate any client. And
Yes.
I think it takes a while to realize that not everybody is going to be your perfect client.
Well, that's one place where we're collaborating with others. You find out that you're doing the same thing as other people, and get together, find out how they solve it, and you solve it too. Doing it all by yourself is you should not be alone in this business.
Yeah.
Not that awful.
Yeah. And speaking of not being alone, a lot of that times, I think it's due to processes. Oh, something comes in, here's a copy paste email with minor tweaks or adding something to a spreadsheet or after a networking event. Would you care to share some of the processes that you use to be so well established in business after all these years?
The way we run our business is there's really only two of us as full-time, and we bring in people on subcontract.
Mm-hmm.
And that could be up to you because you figure you got enough, and then you get on near the opening and on the floor of the event and think, my God, I really don't have that the number that we need. So the process that we have is we think long and hard about just what's going to happen, and I bring my team in.
Yeah.
Just up until COVID, and I haven't got anybody since then, but up until COVID, I had a good team of 4 or 5 who had worked with me probably 25 years. And they would go off and do other things. But whenever I had something come up, I'd let them know. And it was always fun to work with. I made sure they were well compensated and that we looked after each other. So we would put together the event together.
Yeah.
And they had as much interest in the detail and the way we were handling it as I did. So that this was all a collaborative process. And then we'd be on the floor and everybody could back everybody up.
Right.
So that's the actual, that I have to explain to my client. This is the process that we do when we build. We take a small contract, a small proposal, and we build on it, do a logistic program in detail, and add and add and add to it to the point where it'll be 20 pages for a 2-day program, a 2-day event, but you'll see the process in it chronologically of everything we've added to do it. So that basically, on my way to doing the event, if I'm hit by that proverbial bus, somebody else can pick up the paper that I dropped, take it, and run the conference, and nobody will be wiser.
Right. I
mean, that idea, but...
Well, thank you, David. I mean, the show goes on in whatever industry you're in. And obviously, because you're an event expert, we would be remiss if we didn't talk about how COVID has decimated the industry. So in your mind, what's changed and how do we move forward because of COVID?
Well, it's certainly difficult moving forward. I have contracts now. I had nothing during COVID, which is why I sat down and Susan and I decided that we would do something like taking our expertise, because we do have an expertise. Not everybody had 10 years in protocol, and even though the word protocol sends fear into most people's hearts, it really isn't. It's an agreement. It's the way you do it, and the way you do it properly, and everyone's happy with it in the end.
Yeah.
So we decided to put this down on paper and create courses. And we were still working on the sales of it because social media is not something that everybody can just simply jump into. And once you're into it, you work on it. And this is why we've got everything ready with blogs and the course. The one course, Practical Protocol, is 25 hours. So what we want to do is sell these. And we've got a whole series of them, how to book an event with a hotel, how to run an awards dinner, gala awards dinner with speakers and high-end delegate guests.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got all this. It's all ready to go. It's just getting this out there.
So you weren't sitting around waiting for the gigs to happen. You were creating a whole other market of training manuals.
Training and mentoring, because I mentoring, I really do believe in. And I've hired a lot of the people I've mentored. I do a lot of work with Algonquin, probably 20 years on program advisory committee and mentoring students.
Yeah.
And I enjoy that because there's some really great. One course I did, I taught online at Algonquin with 14 students, 12 had master's degrees, and it was an advanced course in advanced event planning. When I was doing the putting together the course, the training course on practical protocol, I took 11 students, and I had a group where on Saturday, Friday mornings for 2.5 hours, we were online, and the person who did the administration of it was in Jeddah, somebody else was in Abuja, and we criticized various aspects of the course. It worked. I changed a lot of things in there, listening to what other people were doing.
You know, David, the time management is so key in every industry, especially event planners. How have you managed the time management aspect?
That's always been a problem. You want to have everything ready for the next day to talk to the client, or in many cases over the years, they never think. But they said, well, on Friday afternoon at 4 o'clock, we'll have a meeting. And then at that conference call, can you have this to us on Monday? There is a Friday night, Saturday, and Sunday.
Yeah.
And everybody else gets a holiday, but the conference planner is expected to have everything ready. That's a problem. It's easy after dinner to go back and go over a program. It's easy on Saturday and Sunday to sit in front of the laptop and clean up something or do some logistic planning. You've got to put time aside for yourself and for your family, especially family. Well, you know, I mean, both of us go out there and we're doing all sorts of things after hours.
Yeah.
It's a hard one. Time planning is very hard. You've really got to set limits.
Yeah.
We've tried doing limits of having the office open for a certain number of hours, and it usually works with some clients, but others. I mean, when you got a call, and we had one that used to call us at 1 and 2 in the morning with the blues in front of her to make changes before the printing. Well, by the time the blues comes out, it's ready to go on print. I mean, that sort of thing really abused your time.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you know, one of the ways the time management I've always approached the events that I attend, and maybe you're in the same boat, is everything we're doing, or I'm doing at least, is to be in business in the future. So those relationships that you talked about so eloquently earlier, it takes time to nurture that rapport.
Yeah.
And it is very time consuming. Like, it doesn't matter if you've been in business 5 years or 50 years.
It certainly is. And try to, I mean, if you're doing an event, say in Vancouver, try and take some time. You can't say if you've got family there, say, well, I'm sorry, I got to go back. Do something. You've got to take time. You've got to spread yourself out a little and see other people.
Yeah.
It's really important to have friends you go and have dinner with, or on the weekend do something with, because once your business is gone and you haven't cultivated your private life, you're gone too.
Yeah, very, very wise. Thank you. David, you have so many successes over the years in and out of government, big conferences, you know, royalty, that sort of thing. Are you able to narrow down a few successes, moments that you are proud of?
Well, some of the ones they're really fascinating. Some of the international meetings, or things like the G7 and G8. I did some of those, and you meet all of the VIPs. You chat with Ronnie Reagan and the President of France, and because they're looking to you. I mean, if you know what you're doing, you give out an aura of I'm the one to talk to,
right.
and they come to you, and they do. I've had all sorts of interesting ones. We did a caribou conference, 5 days discussing caribou. It was fascinating and really fun to run because it was so much interest in it. There's so many of them. One of the interesting things I enjoy in doing conferences, especially international ones, is you're bringing people into Ottawa and showing them the city.
Right.
I've been chair of Ottawa Tourism. I lived in the city. The family moved here in the 1830s. So we've been around. We've seen the city grow, and the family has been in the tourism and board of trade business in the 20s, 30s, 40s. So it's a great city to show off. And in many cases, these people come back because you've shown them something that's really of interest, and you've shown them the city that you like. We love traveling. We haven't done it, of course, since COVID.
Yeah.
Hopefully, I won't get too old to do it at a later time. But there are all sorts of events that I can think back on. Conferences that really went well. One last week. I mean, it was at 30.4 kilometers. I walked through the convention center in 4 days. So 36,000 steps. That was a marathon, but it went well.
Fabulous.
And you really pushed on it. So singling out one particular event, hard to say. Some I've involved the family in.
Oh, yeah.
If I'm doing an event where my daughter's anywhere nearby, and it's an event like a gala dinner, and I need to have somebody who has a voice and to make announcements, get people seated, what better than the daughter who's a trained opera singer? The voice shatters everything in the room, and everybody sits down when you ask. So,
well, there's no doubt, David. Every time I see you, you've been such an ambassador for the city, for entrepreneurship, and it's a pleasure to have the opportunity today. The other side successes. How about some failures, some challenges that you've had? I know in events you could probably write a book about that. But when something doesn't go quite right, how do you manage that?
I've had several that haven't, and one of the problems I've had, and it really goes down to how you work with your client. And some clients just never understand that you're working with them. You're not against them. You're not fighting them. You're not out to get them. And I had one a couple of years ago. It was a wonderful conference. It was just awful to work with because everything we did was questioned as to why are we doing this. They just did not understand that I'm on your side.
Yeah,
I'm here to ensure that everything runs seamlessly, that all of the costs, the budget is maintained. And it's one which is really unfortunate because it was a fabulous group. But it's one that we shudder every time we think of it. Another one was an international women's group, and it was just all over the place trying to keep it. It was a 6-week one.
Oh, that's a long event.
It was awful. And, there's some that you really should not have taken on. And once you get into, and one of the reasons we call them our bag lady clients. We should never have taken them on. It was a slow period. Okay, I guess we really should. We need the work.
But how do you manage that, David? As a small business owner, our first reaction is we have to accept every gig that comes down the pipeline.
It's true. It's true, but sometimes, and it's only in recent years that we've realized it, when we know what it's done to our reputation, because these clients go out and say, well, this DR Dunlop was just dreadful to work with. They fought everything, etc. They did, the setup wasn't what we wanted, what happened to be according to fire code, but that didn't matter to the client. It is something you've got to be really hard-nosed. And you may hate to say no, but I'm sorry we didn't say no to some. I'm sorry recently we've said no to some.
Yeah. Because realizing how it may affect your longevity, your brand in the future, that's a wise decision. Yeah. And so, David, what's next? Where do you see DR Dunlop and Associates moving in the future?
Well, I was surprised actually. A couple of months ago, starting to get back into in-person, on-the-floor conferences. I hadn't really planned to once COVID hit. I thought, well, that's it. Do I really want to get up at 5 in the morning and go and check to make sure things are all set up?
Yeah.
I enjoyed it, which is one problem in this. You should be on the business, not in the business. So you should be on top of it, running it, not being in it, doing everything. My problem is I like it. I like being there. I like dealing with the people. I like having coffee at 5 in the morning with the technician setting things up. I enjoy that. I thrive on that. And in the past two that I've just recently done, I enjoyed getting to the Shaw Center at 5:45 in the morning, 5 days in a row.
Yeah.
And meeting the people I like working with, realizing that I'd missed that. We're probably going to be doing less of that. We'll probably go more and more into the courses, into mentoring clients. Clients don't all know what they want. They don't necessarily need all the services we give. They don't need all of us on the floor, but because there are a lot of very good volunteers, if they know exactly what they're doing, they have job descriptions, they know how they fit in.
Yeah.
We want to do more of that.
You said something very important there, David, among other things, was working more on the business versus in the business. That is a very big point.
It's a huge point, and it's been drilled into me for decades, and I've not really taken it on board.
Yeah, but also if you like doing it, this is how you like spending your time, so great.
Yeah, that's the problem.
Yeah.
And I've done that. I mean, I've done meetings in Paris, Brussels, Geneva, Taipei, and Washington. There was loads of fun in places like that.
Yeah. Well, next time we meet for coffee, maybe we'll make it at 5:30 in the morning, just so you don't feel left out. David, we're almost near the end of our time here. Do you have any closing words of wisdom for the small businesses listening in today?
Meet people like you, Garrett. You bring so many people into the business and help them along with the business. And it's not just you, but there are others in the business too. Not everybody is on their own, having to find their own way. Sure, you've got to do an awful lot on your own, but there are other people like you, like me, who are quite happy to give you advice. So many of my colleagues could say, you meet these people, the younger people who are getting into the business, and you sit down and coffee with them, you have an hour, and you talk about just how your business works and how aren't you giving away the secrets? No. I'm not going to be doing it forever, and there's got to be somebody coming up behind me, or somebody along with me. That's important. That's why I do a lot of work with Algonquin.
Yeah. That's that longevity, that mentorship that we talked about earlier. Yeah. You really hit the nail on the head there, David, when you said when you meet with somebody, it shouldn't just be all about selling them. It's about partnering and like we talked about collaboration and working together for a shared future. I think entrepreneurs get by much further that way, and I agree with you what you said earlier about that.
That's why I enjoy working with you. Why I enjoy sitting down with you. I have a coffee and a beer every so often, and it's far too infrequent.
Yeah.
Because we do have ideas on where we're both going, and maybe it's going to help me where I'm going.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be in the business an awful lot longer. I'm getting getting of an age. I'm not even a baby boomer. I'm pre-baby boomer. And any statistician that never ever talks about us because we're supposedly either in the grave or in the home or being looked after. Well, no, I'm out there.
Many more happy years to go before we get there, David. David, how can somebody get in contact with you, please?
I'm happy to, and I do encourage people to contact me either by email, dunlopdr@rogers.com, or simply phone 613-863-9397. I have no problem on that. I do not restrict calls, and if I don't recognize the name or number, I still answer, to my regret so often, but because I don't need my ducks cleaned all the time. But I'm happy. I do get phone calls from people like, look, I've heard about you. Can you give me some advice?
Yeah.
And I'll sit down for coffee for an hour around here on Preston Street and just talk about how I got into it and what you can do. but you can use your skills on and hopefully you can build. Anyway, Jared, you've got a time for commitments, and I should get back to working on a logistic program.
Excellent, David. Thank you so much. So today, folks, we were joined by David Dunlop of DR Dunlop Associates, thanking him for joining us and sharing some entrepreneur wisdom on Talk to the Fedora. We hope this segment has helped you to grow your small business. So please subscribe to our eSAX YouTube channel and be sure to check out some of the hundreds of other entrepreneurial videos that we have. Thank you so much, David, for your time today.